March 19. A producer's office in Rome. Carlo Ponti sat behind his massive desk, reviewing headshots. He was producing what would become Two Women, La Cucchiara, a prestigious project based on an Alberto Moravia novel, directed by Vittorio De Sica, guaranteed awards attention. The lead role: a widowed mother protecting her daughter during World War II. Beautiful but hardened, vulnerable but fierce. Commercial appeal with artistic credibility. Every major European actress wanted it, but Ponti had narrowed it down to two finalists: his wife Sophia Loren, and the woman every producer in Europe was obsessed with, Brigitte Bardot. Sophia Loren was 35, established, respected, married to Ponti. This role felt like hers by default. Her husband was producing. She had the acting chops. She was Italian, but there was a problem: commercial insurance. The studio wanted a name that could guarantee international box office. Sophia was respected, but not yet a massive commercial draw. Brigitte Bardot was. At 25, she was the most bankable actress in the world. Her name alone could finance a film. So despite Sophia's clear suitability, the studio was pushing hard for Brigitte. And Ponti, caught between his wife and his investors, was considering it. When Sophia learned Brigitte was being considered, she was furious. This role is Italian. The character is Italian. The setting is Italy. And you're considering giving it to a French actress? The studio wants her, Ponti said carefully. They think she'll guarantee American distribution. I don't care what the studio wants. This is my role. I'm your wife. You're producing. How is this even a question? Because the money matters, Sophia. If we cast you, we might not get financing. If we cast Bardot, the film is fully funded immediately. So you're saying I'm not bankable enough? I'm saying the market sees Bardot as a safer investment right now. The words hung between them. Not just a professional assessment, a personal wound. Sophia made a decision. If this was going to be a competition, she'd compete. She couldn't control financing, but she could control the narrative, the public perception, the way the role was discussed. She started giving interviews, subtle at first, then increasingly pointed. I'm honored to be considered for Two Women. It's such a deeply Italian story. It requires someone who understands the culture, the history, the emotional landscape. I think audiences will respond to authenticity. The implication was clear. Brigitte wasn't authentic, wasn't Italian, wasn't right. Brigitte, in Paris, heard about the interview. At first, she didn't care. She hadn't even officially auditioned. The studio had approached her agent, but nothing was confirmed. Then her agent called. Sophia Loren is doing a press campaign against you, suggesting you're not right for the role. I haven't even said I want the role. The studio wants you. They're willing to pay triple what they're offering Sophia. But Loren is married to the producer. It's complicated. So this isn't about the role. It's about her proving she's more valuable than me. Essentially, yes. And if you're interested, you need to fight back. Brigitte hesitated. She didn't want this role, didn't want to work in Italy, didn't want to compete with another actress for validation. But something about the situation needled her. The assumption that she couldn't do serious work, that she was just a pretty face who couldn't handle complex material. Set up an audition. I'll read for it. The audition was scheduled for April 15th in Rome. Both women knew about each other's auditions. The press knew. The entire European film industry was watching. It became a public competition. Beauty versus artistry. Commerce versus credibility. Bardot versus Loren. Sophia auditioned first. April 14th, morning. She was extraordinary, brought depth and nuance to the material. Showed range De Sica hadn't seen from her before. Left the room certain she'd proven herself. Then De Sica said, "Wonderful. Now we'll see what Bardot does tomorrow and make a decision." Sophia's confidence cracked. "You're still considering her? After that reading?" "The studio insists. I have to at least see her. But she's wrong for this. She's too young, too inexperienced, too beautiful, too famous." Be careful what arguments you make, Sophia. Some of them reveal more about you than about her. Brigitte arrived in Rome on April 15th, dreading the audition. She'd prepared, studied the script, worked with an acting coach, but she knew the deck was stacked against her. This was Sophia's territory, Sophia's language, Sophia's style of role. And more than that, the entire industry wanted Brigitte to fail, wanted to prove she was just beauty, not talent, that she couldn't handle serious material. She walked into the audition room expecting judgment. She wasn't wrong. Jessica and Ponti watched as Brigitte read the scene. She was nervous. It showed. She stumbled over a line, started again. Her Italian pronunciation was imperfect, but there was something there, a vulnerability, a rawness, something that couldn't be taught or performed. When she finished, the room was silent. Ponti spoke first. "Thank you, Miss Bardot. We'll be in touch." She left knowing she hadn't been good enough, hadn't proven herself, hadn't overcome their preconceptions. On the drive back to her hotel, she cried, not because she wanted the role, but because she'd been reduced to competing for validation from people who'd already decided she was insufficient. The decision took 3 days. 3 days of negotiations. Studio pressure. Ponti caught between his wife and his investors. Finally, on April 18th, he made the call. Sophia got the role. Not because she was unequivocally better, but because Ponti couldn't give his wife's role to another actress without destroying his marriage. The studio was furious, threatened to pull funding, but Ponti found alternative financing, made it work. When Sophia heard, she was triumphant. She'd won, proven herself more valuable than Brigitte Bardot. She gave an interview to Corriere della Sera. "I'm thrilled to play this role. It requires someone with depth, with understanding of Italian culture and history. I'm grateful the producers recognized that authenticity matters more than commercial appeal." The dig was obvious. Brigitte was commercial appeal without authenticity, beauty without depth. Brigitte read the interview in Paris, and something inside her snapped, not because she'd lost the role, but because Sophia was using that victory to diminish her publicly, to frame it as authentic actress, defeating vapid sex symbol. She called Paris match, gave her own interview. "I auditioned for 2 women at the studio's request. I didn't get the role. That's fine. It happens. But I find it interesting that Sophia Loren needs to turn my rejection into her validation, as if beating me at something I didn't particularly want proves her superiority. The truth is, we're different types of actresses. She's right for certain roles. I'm right for others. Neither is better. They're different. But Sophia seems threatened by that difference. Needs to prove I'm lesser, to feel secure in her own value." The article hit like a bomb. Sophia was furious, called the statement classless and bitter. She responded through her publicist. Miss Bardot's comments reveal her insecurity. A true professional accepts losing gracefully. Her bitterness shows she knows she wasn't good enough. Brigitte shot back. A true professional doesn't need to publicly diminish her competition. Sophia won the role, but she can't help continuing to fight. That says more about her insecurity than mine. The press ate it up. Bardot versus Loren. Beauty battle turns ugly. Behind the scenes, it got worse. Sophia reached out to directors Brigitte was working with, subtly suggested Brigitte was difficult, unprofessional, not worth the headache. One director later admitted, "Sophia called me before I worked with Brigitte, warned me she'd be challenging. It colored my perception before we even met." Brigitte did the same, told producers that Sophia was controlling, that her husband's influence made her impossible to work with objectively. They were both attempting to damage each other professionally, using the 2 women competition as justification for a broader war. The film shot from May to September 1960. Sophia gave the performance of her life, won the Academy Award for Best Actress in her acceptance speech. She thanked Jessica, Ponti, and everyone who believed I was right for this role, despite others thinking I wasn't. The subtext was clear. Despite Brigitte Bardot thinking I wasn't, even in triumph, Sophia couldn't resist the dig, couldn't accept victory without diminishing her competition. Brigitte watched the Oscars from Paris, saw Sophia's veiled reference, felt the familiar anger, but also something else. Pity. Sophia had won everything. The role, the acclaim, the Oscar, and still couldn't stop fighting Brigitte. That revealed more than any interview could. Years later, in 1975, both women were asked about the two-women competition. Sophia's response: "I was the right choice. The role required someone with gravitas, with depth. I proved that I was more than just beauty." The interviewer pushed: "Are you suggesting Bardot was just beauty?" "I'm suggesting the role required more, and I provided that." Brigitte's response, in a separate interview: "Sophia needed to prove she was better than me. I needed to prove I was more than beauty. We both lost that competition actually, because we participated in a system that requires women to tear each other down to feel valuable. Do you regret auditioning?" "I regret that it became what it became. A public competition, a validation contest. Two talented women forced to fight for scraps of respect from an industry that benefits from our conflict." In 1982, they were both at Cannes, hadn't spoken in 22 years. They were seated near each other at the closing ceremony. Sophia arrived first. When Brigitte walked in, Sophia turned away, refused to acknowledge her. Brigitte sat down, leaned over, said quietly, "Are we really still doing this, 22 years later?" Sophia looked at her coldly. "You tried to take my role. You gave interviews diminishing my talent, and you expect me to be friendly? I auditioned at the studio's request, and I gave interviews responding to your attacks. You started this, Sophia, by needing to prove I was inferior. You were inferior. The role proved it. The role proved you were married to the producer. That's different from being better." Sophia stood up, moved to a different seat. They never spoke again. In 1995, a journalist asked Sophia if she'd ever reconcile with Brigitte. "Why would I? She represented everything wrong with the industry. Beauty without substance, fame without talent. I had to fight to be taken seriously. She had everything handed to her." "That's not true," the journalist said carefully. "Bardot also struggled for respect, not like I did. She was worshipped from the beginning. I had to prove myself repeatedly. So no, I won't reconcile with someone who embodied the beauty standard I had to overcome." Brigitte asked the same question in 1998. "Would I reconcile with Sophia? I don't know. Part of me thinks we were both victims of a system that pitted us against each other. Part of me thinks she chose to make it personal when it didn't have to be. She says you represented beauty without substance, and I'd say she represented insecurity disguised as superiority. We both suffered from the industry's tendency to create hierarchies among women. She responded by needing to be on top. I responded by walking away entirely. Which response was better? Neither. They both show how damaged we were by a system that told us our value came from being better than other women, instead of just being ourselves." In 2014, 54 years after Two Women, a film historian asked both women to reflect on that competition. "Sophia, now 80, I won. That's what matters. I proved I was the better actress." Brigitte, now 79, she won the role. But we both lost something more valuable: the possibility of female friendship in an industry designed to keep us isolated. Do you wish you'd handled it differently? Yes. I wish I'd refused to compete. Wish I'd said, "This isn't my role. Good luck to whoever gets it." Wish I hadn't let them turn Sophia and me into enemies when we could have been allies. Did you ever tell Sophia that? No. By the time I understood it, too much damage had been done. Sophia Loren and Brigitte Bardot competed for the same role. What happened was brutal, not because of the competition itself, but because of what they did to each other during and after it. Sophia needed to prove she was more than beauty, more valuable than Brigitte, better. Brigitte needed to prove she was more than a pretty face, capable of serious work, worthy of respect. And the industry that benefited from their conflict sat back and watched them destroy each other. The role went to Sophia. She won the Oscar, achieved everything, but she never stopped fighting. Brigitte never stopped needing to prove superiority. never stopped diminishing her competition to feel secure in her own value. Brigitte lost the role, but gained clarity about a system that required women to defeat each other for scraps of validation. Both paid prices. Sophia paid with obsessive comparison, perpetual insecurity, inability to stop competing even in victory. Brigitte paid with confirmation that serious work was closed to her, that beauty precluded depth, that she'd never be more than what they decided she was. And the real tragedy, they could have been allies, could have supported each other against an industry that diminished them both. Instead, they became enemies for 54 years, until both were too old to remember why they'd fought so viciously over something that mattered so little. One role, 6 weeks of competition, a lifetime of resentment. That's how brutal it was. Not the competition itself, but the fact that neither woman could ever move past it, could ever see each other as anything other than the enemy who represented everything they feared about themselves.